Okay, folks. Is that okay sound-wise, people at the back?
Yes.
Yeah? Do you mind sitting in here, or are you happy there? Okay, you're happy there. Okay. Lights okay? Okay? Just doing a bit of housekeeping. Okay. So before we start, I'm going to do a short meditation. So I'm going to invite you all to turn off your phones or put them on silent, whatever you prefer. And I'm just going to ask you now to close your eyes. Feel your feet on the floor. And this is a little process I call kind of readying yourself for an event like this. So bringing yourself into a receptive mode. So how we plan to do that is just allow your awareness to drop from your head into your heart center. So actually feel that shift going from the head, where the thoughts are, into the heart, where it's about feeling. So go into how you feel right now in the center of your body and drop into that space. And take a couple of breaths into your heart center. And on the out breath, just feel yourself really sinking into your body. And when thoughts come, just let them go. And when you think of your day, just let that go. And really feel yourself in the present moment. Feel the chair under you, feel the floor under your feet. Feel that sense of presence. And just to remember while you're in this heart space that we'll have a discussion here tonight on a few different topics. And some of the things you hear you will like and you'll resonate with, and some of the things you hear you won't agree with or won't be for you. So I'm just going to ask you to stay in this heart space where you just take away whatever resonates and simply let go of the rest. No need to go into judgment, just let go of it and just take what resonates with you. So that keeps you in a nice, receptive mode. And now in your heart center, just see a little smile go off. Get a sense of your heart smiling back at you. See a little light go off in your heart. And now as you open your eyes, feel a great sense of groundedness, presence, receptivity, and being in your heart. Okay. So first of all, you're all very welcome to Positive Nights. Lately we've been getting amazing guests, really interesting topics. It's really it's brilliant. We interviewed Jack O'Keefe the other morning, who was talking about consciousness and letting go of your identity. And recently we had Krishna Das at a bigger event. So it's really some interesting people coming in. So tonight's a topic we're going to talk about is emotional well-being in the face of climate change. So climate change, as we all know, is really topical, and something happened today as well, which we'll discuss with the government, I think. But tonight our guest is Hema Vyas, who has her background would be in psychotherapy. So she's worked as a psychotherapist for 30 years. She's now working as a spiritual mentor with individuals, and she would also be quite active in the whole climate crisis area. But the real topic, as I said, we want to talk about is the ability to stay within that sense of well-being emotionally while whatever's going around you is going on, you know. So to stay in that centered space So before we start, let's give Hema Vyas a big welcome to Dublin, a big welcome to Ireland.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you, Hema. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Brilliant. So I'd like to set the stage a little bit and just ask you about your own background, how you ended up in London, where you come from, your kind of little bit about your family background, and what brought you into the whole area of working as a psychotherapist, I suppose.
So I was born in Africa and I moved to London when I was very young, about 5 years old. So it was really interesting, going through the transition of not speaking English and having to sort of really adjust. And I found that I was a natural empath. So what I found was that when I was around people, they gravitated towards me, and it was really interesting because I didn't understand why. I didn't speak the language, and it was all a bit new. I was very shy. I'm still very shy, believe it or not. So, I grew up in London, and I think I always had an inkling towards working with people. I always felt their emotions, and so it was natural that I was going to become a therapist, because at that time, that was the most natural job to do when you were in tune with people, their emotions, their feelings. So that's part of the beginning of my journey, Paul.
Sure. And would you describe yourself as kind of an empath, that type of energy? Would you really feel what somebody was going through? Have you always been like that?
Absolutely. Since I was very, very young,
Okay.
I was very attuned to people.
And did that help you then in helping them to kind of release that type of stuff because you knew what was going on for them? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that started me on my own journey to discover what was going on for me, because I could feel all these feelings and they weren't always mine. So that was really interesting. And then once I discovered that it wasn't necessarily my feelings and I could help people move through, and recognizing that actually there was a solution, that was really important to me. And that's why I became a therapist, because I knew that I could help people see through whatever space they were stuck in.
And I'm just interested to know what your main way of working was. You said there that it would bring up stuff in you, so did you kind of feel that you had to clean up what was in you to help them move forward as well? Is that, it's kind of nearly always a reflection of where we're at, I suppose. Did you work like that specifically?
Absolutely. I went on my own journey. So apart from my academic training, I actually went through my own spiritual awakening and did my own practices, meditation, yoga, and really getting to know myself. Only then did I feel I was able to actually help people, because then I knew the difference between what was mine and what was theirs. But I also had such huge empathy in terms of going through my own journey. I was able to recognize where people were intuitively. Even if I hadn't been through it, there was an intuition there that allowed me to connect with what was going on for them.
And I suppose our topic tonight, as I said, is emotional well-being and climate change. So talk to us a little bit about what you mean by emotional well-being. Just describe that for us.
So emotional well-being, I think it's about a level of resilience. It's being able to maintain a positive attitude in the face of whatever happens. Because of course we can all be really positive when things are going well, when we're happy, when things are good. But I think that, really emotional well-being is about so much more than that. It's being able to navigate the ups and downs of life and, the different sort of emotions that we're going to all go through, because emotions are part of our life. They're part of our journey as human beings, and I think they're an important part of our lives. And I don't think we're here just to experience the positive emotions. We're here to experience a whole range of emotions, including those that we may consider negative. And so if we have emotional well-being, I think we can accept the good with the bad.
And is it kind of cultivating an ability to just be able to sit with whatever presents itself? Is that what you would encourage people to do?
Absolutely, yes. The beginning would be to sit with it, but I think it's also being able to navigate your way through it so that you get to maybe a higher level of consciousness, to be able to get through whatever's going on that might seem negative, to transcend that space so that you're able to then see a bigger picture.
And is there tools that you would offer people to do for that type of work? How do you make that move? How do you make that move to a greater sense of awareness, a greater sense of Yeah, what you said. Yeah, how consciousness.
So, Paul, I would say perhaps, there are so many tools, and so the ones that I would employ would first of all be being able to talk about it, because often we carry a level of shame. So we think, well, I'm the only one going through this and I can't possibly talk about it because everybody else is okay, I'm the one who's not. So it's being able to talk about it first of all, and once you're able to talk about it, you can talk about it to somebody who can actually help you see that you're not the only one going through it, which is why people resonate with support groups, where people are all going through similar things. But I would also say raising consciousness is acknowledging where you are, acknowledging what the problems might be or what you might be experiencing, knowing there is a way through it. Meditation is something that I'm so passionate about, and each and every single client, I will absolutely insist that they meditate, because meditation is about the inward journey and finding your own truth and finding your own voice and finding what's real for you, because so many people can help you, but ultimately you have to be able to help yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then when we move into the area of climate change and bring these tools with us, I said this to you earlier, I went to an event at the Electric Picnic and people were talking about climate change and climate crisis, and I found the atmosphere to be quite fearful, to be quite angry, but also there was some really amazing things said. But from my own perspective, I was thinking it's hard for people to understand what they're expected to do. They do all the kind of normal things we all do, like recycle, limit plastic and that kind of stuff. But I felt that it kind of needs a bit of a rebranding, the whole climate change thing, because it brings up so much fear in people. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, how you feel about that?
I agree so much with what you're saying, Paul, that I feel it does need rebranding. We cannot deny that we are, experiencing so many things on this planet that, we do need to think about, what we're doing and how we're living and how we're being. But at the same time, I think that it's absolutely an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to perhaps break free of some of the limiting thoughts and beliefs that we've held for so long. So it's not just about what we do in terms of plastic. I know plastic is a big problem, but it's actually about what we're doing about our own emotional well-being. I feel the branding has to move away from the fact that it's a crisis, and I would say it's transformation. We're heading towards transformation, and that transformation is so needed. And what's happening with the crisis as we're experiencing it is that, people are becoming more aware. People are connecting and having conversations, and that's what's needed. And I think that that's wonderful.
And there's some great organisations working with this at the moment, isn't there? We talked about the Extinction. What's the full title of the Extinction?
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion,
yes.
And there's a few others as well. What type of work are these people doing? What do you see that is happening on the ground at the moment? What type of work are they doing?
Well, I personally have spoken to so many people who are part of the Extinction Rebellion, and the marches and the people coming together to actually talk about what they really want to bring about on this earth. And the way that it was portrayed in the media was very negative in London. And what was really going on was they were just spreading love. They were spreading love. They were there coming together in harmony, and people were coming to form communities, I would say. People kept in touch with other people. They made friends with other people. It was almost like going to a concert or Glastonbury or something like that, where they were actually talking about how they can bring more love on this planet, because that's the real answer. It's about recognizing that we need to have more love, not more hate, not more anger, not more resistance. We need to bring about a change where we're actually talking about what's needed on a deeper level. And that's what I feel they were doing. And that's not to say everybody, because of course with anything like this, Paul, what I find is that, you know, it gives people who want to disrupt things an opportunity to do so, but they're the ones who get talked about. But we're not seeing all the other things that are happening, and I would say there was a lot of beauty there, a lot of connection, and a lot of love. There was singing and chanting and meditating, all the things that I believe are responsible for bringing about a raising consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And we spoke earlier a little bit about, I suppose, when we say climate crisis, climate change, the reason I'm saying that we need a kind of a rebrand is there's some great quotes from people like Buckminster Fuller and Einstein, who, you know, if you're going to quote Einstein, it's a good source. So you can't, remind me of that one again from Einstein's a good one.
It's, you can't solve a problem at the level of thinking that created it.
Okay. So that for me is like, the one thing that didn't come up in the event at Electric Picnic was the whole area of consciousness. And that, as I said to you, that kind of feeling of self-awareness, that we all have to become a lot more self-aware and factor the planet into that self-awareness, you know. Can you talk a bit about that, how you see people, I suppose, help people to understand what is required of them right now, because a lot of people don't know what they're expected to do. Can you give us a sense of that?
Well, of course, there's so much we can do physically and practically, and so I think that that's one thing we do obviously need to give attention to. But personally, I think everybody can do a little bit of what I was talking about, my own journey, which is, you know, the self-reflection, because I believe that we're part of the planet is part of us. We are made up of all the same elements, and the way that it manifests so differently is simply the level of consciousness, and it's recognizing that, you know, as we shift our own internal realities, what's going to happen is that the planet is going to shift accordingly. And so we need to start looking at where we are disconnected, where we are living a superficial lifestyle, because that is symbolic of the plastic that we become so addicted to, right? Everything is plastic in some way, which is a reflection of humanity, I believe. And so I feel like what each person can do, the practical things they can do in terms of not using so much plastic, etc., but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, what they can do is to start spending more time internally reflecting, taking time to look at what's going on in their own heart space, what they're holding on to, the shadows, the aspects of denial, the aspects of themselves that they're not fully present to, where a deeper healing has to occur, because as we heal ourselves, we are part of a kaleidoscope, and as we heal ourselves, I believe we will heal the planet. The planet is simply a reflection of who we are and what's going on for us, as we are simply a reflection of what's going on in the planet.
That's quite empowering, you know, so you're kind of saying that you're changing it slightly, and you're saying actually it's quite empowering, it's up to us how we navigate this, yeah.
Absolutely.
I suppose another thing I wanted to talk about was the whole difference of opinion. So if we have people who actively believe in this cause and believe there's no other way and we have to get serious, there's a crisis, and then we have other people who just want to go for a pint, or they just don't have any understanding of it. So how do we create a place where all opinions are allowed to be heard? You know, because there's so much now talk about political correctness, you can't really say anything anymore. You can, you know, all that, the way the world has become in terms of, we say there's free speech, but really, there isn't really free speech now. I mean, entertainers talk about it when they do a radio interview, they're not going to say anything challenging. When I interview people as well, like, they're very careful what they can and can't say. So how do we all exist and allow each other to be completely different and to have completely different opinions? Even the, I suppose in inverted commas, kind of crazy opinions. How do you, I mean, can you look at someone like that and allow them to express what you would consider to be kind of crazy behaviour? Can you allow that space for someone to be like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say I fall under that category where often I'm the minority in the group, and that's probably part of my background. So I would say that, I'm usually somebody who speaks out and people are shocked at what I say in terms of politics and things like this, because usually there's an opinion and I have the opposite, and I don't mind because they have their... I believe that, in the way that nature, if you look at nature, it's so varied, it's so diverse, it's so beautiful, and nature absolutely has a purpose. And I believe that we're the same, Paul. I believe that, everyone's opinion matters because they have their opinion for a reason. And so I don't think that we need to judge anybody if they hold a space or an opinion or a thought or a belief that's different. But I think it adds to the tapestry of life. And as long as we're all working towards the same goal, which is, evolution, and that we have a planet worth saving.
And I suppose how we open tonight as well, a lot of your work is working with the heart, and we hear a lot of that now in spiritual circles as well, that the ability to move from your mind to the mind is very opinionated, very judgmental. It disagrees with everybody. We all have a mind. We all have to listen to it. Okay, so you know what your own internal dialogue is like. And then when you express that dialogue about somebody else, it doesn't really get us anywhere, So I'm just wondering about how do you said you work a lot with the heart space in your own work when you're doing spiritual mentoring and all. How do you get people to become more aware of that kind of felt space?
So yes, I've been working with heart energy for as long as I've been a psychotherapist. That was the beginning of my journey. I was, very connected to what was going on. So often people would talk about what they were thinking and what was going on for them, mentally. And I would then go in with what I felt was going on for them emotionally, what was going on for them on a heart level. And what was amazing was just seeing people, their jaws dropping, going, oh my God, it's like you know me better than I know myself. And so I would say that it's a vibration, and when you tune into that vibration, you're able to pick up on what is beneath the surface. And that is so symbolic of what I think is going on with the world, that we need to go beneath the surface, because it's not about what's happening on top, it's about what's happening underneath. And so the way that I get to work with people is, one, I highlight and I say to people what I feel is going on for them, and when they hear it, what's happening is they feel that it's being mirrored back to them. What they're afraid to own in themselves is being mirrored back to them. And when they feel that mirror is accepted, because of course when I say to them, I can feel your hurt, your woundedness, or whatever's going on for them, and they feel that it's accepted, it's not judged, it's not repressed, it's not suppressed, it's not denied, that lack of denial and that real acceptance, I feel, allows them to open up their hearts immediately, and then they begin the journey. And then the journey is the journey. The journey could be working with me, it could be reading, it could be, going on a path of spiritual discovery. And I say spiritual because it is spiritual discovery from my perspective. Meditation is one of the key points, as I've said before, that, that's how I get them to connect with their heart, by actually getting them to recognize whatever's held deep and buried in their hearts is acceptable. And that's what a lot of people don't feel.
And you think applying the heart to the climate crisis will be a lot more effective way of working, yeah?
100%. 100%. I believe that the more we connect to our hearts, the more we connect to the truth within our hearts, the more we clear the shadows that are held within our hearts, we are going to bridge the gap that's in our hearts that is creating the divide in the world that we're experiencing. And when we give rise to the heart energy, we give rise to things like intuition. When we give rise to things like intuition, we give rise to things like compassion, and when compassion becomes ignited within all of us, we start behaving organically in very different ways. We don't need to think about it. We don't need somebody to tell us, don't use X, Y, and Z because it's not good for the planet. We feel it because we are in tune, we are intuitively in tune with ourselves and therefore the world around us, because the heart is what connects all of us ultimately to each other, to every living organism and to the planet.
It's good what you're saying there, because if you're in a kind of a protest state, you're not in this, like all the great artists, anybody who produces great work from that place of inspiration, it's usually from being out of your mind and in your heart and in your body. Yes. So to move there, we're probably going to get better insights about what energies we can use, about what's more sustainable. You know, in a sense, I think most of the people in this room would agree that the planet is alive. It's a living being. It's probably a bit more evolved than we are, so it knows what it's about. So if we move to a space where we kind of, you know, you communicate with nature, you communicate with the earth in a different way, you're not really going to hear what she's saying if you're protesting and if you're... But I don't want to... I mean, all of these things serve a purpose and they get us to another step, you know. But I want to now talk about, as I mentioned the word protest, I want to talk about young people. And they're passionate about this subject. Some of them are very fearful of this subject. There's a lot of anxiety with young people. My own niece is suffering with depression previously, and so I hear these stories, and young people are kind of scared. And then we have this lady, Greta Thunberg, who's championing the whole area, who's a great speaker. Do you work with young people? How do you feel about their role in all of this, and from talking to them? What have you felt from them?
So I do work with young people, and I'm absolutely blown away by them because they are so conscious, and the people I work with for sure, they're so conscious and so aware, and that there's a reason why they're so frightened of what's happening, because I think that the fear is really about the fact that the adults and the older generations, myself, people like us here, I think they're frightened that we're not taking it seriously, and they're frightened because they're, with anything, when there's a real no in the world, when we want to say no to something, we have to get enough courage, we have to get enough energy, and that often will be displayed as protest or anger, or because I think that, it's hard to be heard unless you've got extra energy, and so that's what I think the protests are really about. I think it's just their way of saying we will be heard, and I think we all owe it to them to stop and listen to what's really being said, and it's not about what they're saying, it's about what we're saying to ourselves. The inner dialogue, the conversations we're having with ourselves is what really needs to be heard, because they're simply a mirror for us, because they are expressing what a lot of people have not been able to, which is something has to change. And there's no denying something has to change, and the truth is change is happening.
And this lady, Greta Thunberg, are people familiar with this lady? Yeah, she's done a lot of amazing... Is there something coming up soon for her? A rally or an event? Tomorrow?
Yeah. Tomorrow, yeah.
Just give her a free plug. That's her? Okay, so the sticker. Okay. And I just want to talk today, something happened today in government here. What exactly happened? Something was voted against, or does someone know about that? Yeah.
I've only found it myself. I printed it out before I came here from Green.
You printed it out, okay.
Sergeant, it was the case, I think 1 o'clock or something, the judgment was given in this case that FIE Friends, they're not Friends of the Earth, but they're a similar organisation, they found that the state plan was not unlawful. It was a constitutional case was being taken, and they were hoping that it would be agreed that the government's legislation on the climate navigation they were trying to show it was in breach of our constitutional right to a healthy environment, they were claiming we had, the FIE unfortunately lost the case, But it's not a complete disaster at all. I'm a lawyer myself, so I really wouldn't go by a news report.
You're a lawyer?
Well, yeah, I don't work as one now, but
okay.
I was.
Okay.
But it is actually a good kind of thing. I'm in Friends of the Earth myself, and I've only been printed out and reading it on my way here. It's actually very good because the judge has established one thing. I mean, they may have lost the case, but that there is an unenumerated right under our constitution to healthy environments, and that in itself is accepted because it can be built on in later cases. So this isn't an unmitigated disaster. I mean, they lost the case, and they are considering an appeal, and they can go to Europe after. Our Supreme Court's not the High Court. It's only a High Court case anyway. It can be appealed to the Supreme Court first, and then they can go to Europe. But I have the thing here. I won't speak on it because I'm not an expert. I haven't a chance to read it more than once. But I think there's good stuff in it.
You've given us a flavour of it. Thanks. Yeah. And you can represent us when we go forward.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm not an administrator either. I don't practice now. I don't even study. I can pass it down once, but really, I'm only put it out there. You can pass it around to everybody. It's
thank you. Which takes me to my next question, though. How serious do you feel the governments of the world are taking this whole area? They're not. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this may offend some people here, but I think that, really one of the big things that needs to happen is an overhaul of governments. I think that's one of the biggest cancers in our societies. So that's just putting it out there.
And do you mean the way the whole system works? Do you feel democracy is a bit of a fake in a sense?
Yeah, I believe that we don't really have a democracy. Certainly in the UK, we don't have a democracy. I think in the world, there are some amazing leaders, but they're not usually in politics or in government. And when there have been attempts at leaders to come together to form some sort of, a world parliament of some sort, that has the people who we really need to have a voice, people who like a lot of religious people who are about consciousness and about love and about how we can work together and work cooperatively. It hasn't always worked out, because a lot of governments are ego-driven and they're very much about the mind, and that's not to say there aren't a lot of people in government trying to work the back end, but the problem is that the way the structure is, that who really has any authority? And so you end up with few people making a lot of the decisions, and we know that it's not working because a lot of the decisions, there are so many people who are actually against it, but we don't have a voice.
Do you feel like like the G8, all the big leaders, they come together and they have a climate conference? Do you feel they're just kind of trying to get votes? Do you feel they're just trying to keep people happy, or do you feel there's good work being done as well in some ways? I mean, is there any country that impresses you with what they're doing? Any leader that impresses you right now with what he or she is doing? Anybody stand out?
No specific leader, not in any country. I mean, I think, to be honest, I do believe that there are a lot of people doing a lot of good, and I think that there are people who are genuinely interested in bringing about changes in so much that's going on in the world, and I can't speak about each of them because I don't know them and I'm not involved in politics. I'm talking generally, and I'm talking overall. There needs to be an overall of what's really happening in terms of government, in terms of leadership. Leadership needs to change because, leaders impact all the way down, and I think we need people who are making much more better decisions around the collective consciousness and not just what's good for one person, but doing it from a place of individual kind of what's right for the individual country. And again, it's about diversity. It's not that we have to all work as one. It's not that we all have to be the same. We can all be different, but we do also need to have people who are doing things differently and then working together, creating a whole in a different way, if that makes sense.
Do you feel, though, in a sense, I've often looked at politics and thought, we every few years we vote for basically the other side. We vote for one side, they don't do it, so then we vote for the other side again. And we expect this one person or this one party to suddenly dramatically change and And I think we're investing too much power in these people as well. You know, we've got to take it back. So the system, I mean, I think we'll all agree the system is pretty defunct. It's not necessarily the leaders. They just get into the role, they play the popularity contest, and that's kind of where we're at, yeah. Except for Trump, obviously, he's great. He's doing a great job. Really happy with him.
Absolutely. Well, thank God he's in power, right? Yes, absolutely. You know, I feel like it's a leaders in the sense that we need somebody who's willing to say, actually, we need to change the way this is working. We need more people to speak up and say, we need to change this. This isn't working. How things are currently is not working. And that's where I feel the young people are coming up and they're having a say, and they want to have a say because I feel they have a vision that is different to what has been, and that's what I feel this is all about. There's transformation that's happening on this earth at this moment where I feel like things are going to have to get so bad that we have no choice but to break it down. And when it breaks down, it gives everybody an opportunity to hold a different vision for what's possible.
Are you optimistic, Hema, about what's happening?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why are you so optimistic?
Because I feel like, you know, we have the power. And I think you and I spoke a little bit earlier, and I think you mentioned about Abraham Hicks and saying that everything can transform in a minute, in a flash. And I really believe that. I really believe that we can change so quickly. All that really needs to happen is to start recognizing the importance of being able to step into our hearts, to be able to make decisions that are really right for us. And yet, when we make a choice from a heart that is right for us, we recognize that it's right for everything and everyone around us. And I mean everything, because it's not just about people. Humans are not the only things that are important on this planet. There's so much that's important. And the sooner we realize that we are not alone, we do not exist just for ourselves, that there is so much more at stake. And I believe that we're getting to that place, Paul. I really believe that everybody wants something different, and they may not know how to get there right now, but the fact that people want change is so positive. And once we want change, and once conversations start occurring around what changes are possible, then change becomes possible. And we need the 100th monkey syndrome, where there's just enough people who are willing to say, yes, I believe in a better future for us, for humanity, for the planet, then that can just spread, and before we know it, everybody's going to want that better vision. Or a majority are going to want the better vision.
You mentioned Abraham, as we spoke earlier. Abraham Hicks is actually one of the reasons this whole event started, because I was a big fan of theirs. People familiar with their work in the room? Can I have a show of hands who heard of Abraham Hicks? Okay, so it's a good crowd. Roisin is there. Okay. So they talk about, in their work, they talk about contrast, okay? So that within your own life, you know, we all motor along and we kind of do what we can. But then if something extreme happens, we get our act together pretty quick and we focus on what we want to happen, right? So right now, that's what's happening on the planet. And they would describe contrast as a beautiful thing. They would say, I mean, I've heard them say that Trump is actually quite beautiful because he shows you exactly what you don't want. And therefore, you choose what you do want in a much more emphatic, powerful way. So, you know, I like the way they describe contrast. You know, so right now we have a lot of contrast going on. So actually, we've got a really big opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said. And, you know, so I'm obviously in good company here, right? Because
they're all hippies.
Yeah. Wonderful. Because I remember when, you know, there was the talk of Trump, you know, actually being, you know, elected. And I remember saying, it's wonderful. And I meant it sincerely. I wasn't being sarcastic. I genuinely meant it. And so, of course, you know, my close friends would say, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And I said exactly the same thing. That, you know, actually, I didn't use the word contrast, but I said it's exactly what we need, you know, to see the severity of this dictatorship, which is what it feels like when we don't actually have a say. Because when you've got two people to choose from and neither are what you really want, then, you know, you don't really have a choice. And so that's where we empower ourselves, I believe, to actually recognize that we may not have a choice as to who we elect, but we do have a choice as to who we are going to be in relation to what's happening. And I think what's happening with people like Trump being elected is people are saying, well, I don't want them to govern me, so I need to start thinking about how I'm going to take control of my life and be responsible. Whereas for years, we did just allow others to kind of tell us what to do and where to go and what to be in some ways. Do you know what I mean?
And this brings us back again to self-awareness, you know, to saying to yourself, I mean, I think, you know, a great proponent of all of these areas would be somebody like, what's his name, Russell Brand. You know Russell Brand, yeah? He's a great...
Love him.
Yeah, he's a real revolutionary, right? And he would talk about that ability to... You're not looking to this person to lead you, you know? And he then said that once you get into a space where you're not looking for that, our leaders will reflect that, you know? Because we do need leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that in terms of, I suppose, the key word here is awareness. What we can do with our own awareness to kind of raise the game for leaders, yeah?
Yeah, so in terms of awareness, I feel like, you know, it's bridging the gap between the parts of us that we're conscious of and the parts that we're not conscious of. Because contrast is simply the shadow aspects of ourselves, the parts that we're not aware of, but it has to have expression because all of life is an expression of all of who we are. And so if we want to raise our awareness, it's recognizing that this is a great opportunity to start taking responsibility for our own lives. And that means taking responsibility for our emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical, financial well-being, and not relying on, you know, the powers that be at the moment.
Okay, so we're getting kind of close to a little bit of a break. I just wanted to ask you a little bit before we go in, because the second half we'll have people asking questions and we'll make it a lot more interactive. But I just want to, you're here to do an event tomorrow, so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Tell us a bit about the event and what you're going to be speaking about and the other topics that are happening at the event as well. It's tomorrow, isn't it? In the Law Society. The Law Society tomorrow, yeah.
Absolutely. So it's amazing, you know, the lady Monica, she's in the audience. She's put it together, I mean, completely like a child of hers that she's nurtured and brought to life so incredibly quickly, and incredible powerhouse. So the conference is about living and working consciously. It's about climate change and about what we're experiencing. There's going to be some amazing speakers talking about the kind of things we've been talking about. I'm going to be doing the keynote speech, which is going to really be about the hard energy and about entrepreneurs as future leaders, as people who are leading industry and businesses and the kind of choices that they're making. And I'm going to be also talking about my thoughts that I've shared a little bit today about what's going on with the climate and about the earth and about our relationship to it. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my background, which is I'm originally from India, and I have my mother's side, they're all Vedas, which is Ayurvedic doctors, and so that's my background. And there's a rise in Ayurveda, there's a rise in sort of a lot of these kind of, you know, thoughts around what I've grown up with and taken for granted, and I realise just how powerful they really are. And a lot of, you know, the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, talk about all of this. So this is not something unpredicted. This is something that's been written about, you know, and been around thousands of years. And unfortunately, we didn't change the direction sooner, but I guess we weren't supposed to. Everything happens as it's meant to. So that's going to be a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. And there's going to be some breakout workshops, etc., and a question and answer time as well. It's going to be
good. So just to finish on, Hema, I just want to ask you about the role of nature in all of this, as you mentioned the Vedics and Ayurveda. So just in terms of when we look at the natural world, and I see there's a lot more people who engage, who like to go hiking, like to get out and hug a few trees and all that kind of thing. I suppose nature can play a role in the whole climate shift. Can you talk a bit about nature and what that means to you in your own life and how it can help you? I mean, it's great that we see now things like forest therapy being prescribed. I think it's in Japan, but also even here it's being prescribed as well for people. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe nature is speaking to us, and I think that nature is crying out to us and saying, you know, what needs to happen, because, you know, it's like when we have a pain in our leg, you know, that is our leg saying to us something is not right, we need to look at it. And the you know, what's happening in nature at the moment is nature saying, you know, you need to look at this. And so, you know, trees are so essential to our lives. You know, they're not just essential to us in terms of oxygen, they're not just essential in terms of greenery, they're essential to every aspect of who we are and what's happening, you know, on Earth, but also the sea. You know, it impacts the sea, it impacts all the creatures, it impacts everything, everyone. So nature is a part of who we are, and I feel like we need to listen to this part of ourselves. Because, you know, from Ayurvedic perspective, everything in nature is here for our benefit, and we are here for its benefit. And when we recognize the interconnectedness of that, then we recognize that we have to save ourselves by saving the planet, by saving nature, because nature is an integral part of our survival.
That's great. We'll take a break for about 5 or 10 minutes. There's some coconut water, and use the bathroom if you need to. We'll come back in 10 minutes, and we'd love to hear your questions for Hema. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Hema.
It went into low battery. I didn't realise. Yeah.